Hey George, so I know I'm the worst best friend for not being here tonight to help you celebrate your 21st birthday, and I completely understand if you hate me for it, but I'm sorry to say it, you're going to hate me just a little bit more after this is done. A lot of you may not realise this, but George and I didn't really know each other until year 11, and it wasn't until our Central Australia trip that I realised just how mad this kid really was. Not only did Central bring us together, but finding someone who shared the same love for Nutella as I did was definitely the deal maker for a long friendship to come. 5.5 years has passed since then, and Georgia and I have grown closer and closer every day, and I'd like to think that I'm one of the few people in this world that can say they know Georgia the best. Knowing George this well means we spend a lot of time around each other, which has led to many a night out, and for those of you who don't know Georgia quite so well, this comes with a lot of responsibility. I come to realise that Georgia should come with instructions when taking her on a night out, and I've decided to dub these the 5 things you should know before going out with Georgia, and they are as follows. Number 1. She's a Toucan Sam. As Nick Cian can tell you from previous experiences at the Yakaneta Folk Festival, Georgia's not one to hold her drink. Admittedly, she was underage at the time, and it was probably the first drink she'd ever had. But let's be serious, you can't be getting drunk off the fumes, George. She makes bold claims that she's improved her drinking skills since then. The last time I went out to catch up with her at 9 o'clock, she was already licking my face and telling me how much she loved me. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, thinking, okay, it's the first day of Christmas holidays and everyone's been drinking all day. So I asked her what time she started and how many drinks she'd had. She replied in true Georgia form, I've had 4 double blacks. Number 2, she should come with a volume control. For those of you who've ever spent any time with Georgia, you should know that she's not exactly the quietest person going around, and regularly has to be told to use her inside voice. But you just wait until she has a drink in her hand. It's like the bottle is a megaphone and vodka is the on switch. And I can tell you now, it doesn't come with an off switch. This would be fine if she used normal words, but usually by the wee hours of the morning, the only words that come out of her mouth are "ah," followed by a big kiss on the lips. The only positive to this is that whenever you lose her, you can usually track her by her voice. Which brings me to my next point. Number 3, she's a wanderer. Most people our age tend to go out and get really drunk and lose their phone or a camera. This is not the case with our group. Instead, we lose Georgia. She's like the modern day Houdini. You could tie her to your wrist all night and yet somehow you'd still manage to lose her. Usually she'll come back in an hour or so with a great tale of how she's met her cousin's cousin's cousin. Or sometimes she just won't come back at all, and then an hour later you'll hear her yelling from the other side of the club. But my personal favourite story was when I got a call from her and she'd somehow managed to walk all the way down to Groove Saint by herself in the space of about 20 minutes. And by the time I'd gotten down there, she'd passed out on a bench. I actually don't think I can recall a night out that George hasn't gone walkabout. This is half the fun. You're always guaranteed to meet a new friend when she's around. Number 4, she loves a good nap. There's been many times when I've found Georgia having a little power nap on a night out, such as the before mentioned bench nap. But my favourite story came during the good old Roy days. I can't quite recall what night it was, who we were out with, or why we were even out. Georgia, as per usual, went missing. Got to about 3 in the morning and I realised I hadn't seen George for a good 2 hours, so I went on a search. I did about 4 laps of the club and still no sign. It wasn't until I walked past a group of girls at the bar and overheard them laughing about how there was a girl passed out in the toilets, and I thought, oh no. So we ran into the bathroom. I had a quick glance around and all the doors were open bar one in the corner. I walked over to it and all I could see was this shoe attached to a leg poking out from underneath. And sure enough, it was George's shoe. I managed to push my way into the toilet and find poor little G with her head on her arm, leaning on the toilet seat and the other leg wrapped around the bowl. Trying to get her to sit up was a feat, and after many angry, drunken grunts from Georgia and the help of some lovely stranger, we managed to get Georgia to sit up and have a glass of water. Pretty sure this is the night her famous 1 drink to 1 water policy spawned. By this stage, there was an angry security guard that had gotten onto Georgia's state and was waiting at the door to kick her out. I called my mum to come and get us, and this was where the last and probably the most important thing you should know about Georgia comes in. Number 5, she loves a good spew. As most of you know, the trip home from Albury to Wodonga after a night out should take, at best, 20 minutes. That's including a Macca's run. This fine night, after finding Georgia passed out in the Roy toilets, Mum was the lucky one to come and take us home. Previous to her arriving, Georgia had had a good power spew in the bushes out the front of Roy. When Mum arrived, we piled Georgia into the car, sitting her in the front so I could hold her up, and Mum could tell if she needed to stop or not. About 2 minutes into the trip, we had to stop. I reached open the door and held Georgia's hair back, while Mum, still in the driver's seat, reached over and held onto her skirt, making sure she didn't fall out of the car. It was teamwork at its best. This little routine continued another 4 or 5 times until we finally got Georgia home, only an hour and a half later. We decided it was best not to take her home to Liz and John, so she stayed at my place. And from then on, my place became Georgia's usual crashing place after a night out, and Mum and Dad became a lot more accustomed to Georgia's spewing, my 17th, New Year's, and 18th, just to name a few. On a more serious note, I honestly could not ask for a more loving, thoughtful, trustworthy, and beautiful friend. Georgia, you are my absolute rock, and I honestly don't know where I'd be without you. Even though 300 kilometres of gravel has separated us for 2 years, and now over 16,000 kilometres and one huge big ocean does, you still remain one of my closest and most treasured friends. You are the first one I call when things turn to shit, the first person I want to share exciting news with, the one I look to for advice, one of the few people I let sleep in my bed, and the only person that will, without fail, always laugh at my jokes. We've had a pretty difficult last couple of years, but you've always been my one constant, and for that I cannot be more thankful. There aren't many people that can make me laugh when I've been crying, and definitely only a handful that can make me cry from laughter, but you definitely have both those covered. You're a rare breed, G-Moz, and I mean that in only the best way. There's definitely no one quite like you, and I'm blessed to have been able to call you my best friend for the past 5 years. Congratulations on the last 21 years, George. You've truly grown into be the most beautiful person inside and out, and I cannot be more proud of you. Thank you for the many years of laughs and memories. I cannot wait for many more years to come. Again, I'm so sorry I couldn't be here tonight, but I'll be waiting eagerly in an airport for you in Europe on the 17th of June. I might even wear my onesie. I love you to the moon and back, George. Have the best night. Mwah.